She ran from her toxic boyfriend through the rain-soaked night, nothing but worn shoes and an old suitcase. Desperate, she slipped into the trunk of a black car parked behind the hotel, hoping to find escape by morning. But when the trunk opened, the man standing before her wasn't ordinary. He was Lorenzo De Luca, Milan's most notorious mafia boss. Instead of anger, his eyes settled on her trembling face, and he said quietly, "You chose the wrong car, but perhaps the right person." The rain hit Clara Bennett's face like frozen needles as she stumbled through the alley behind the Grand Europa Hotel. Her suitcase, a battered brown thing she'd owned since college, dragged behind her. One wheel completely gone, water soaked through her thin jacket within seconds. She couldn't go back. Not this time. The memory of Ethan Cole's hand around her wrist burned worse than the cold. His face, twisted with that familiar rage, flashed through her mind. "You're nothing without me," he'd said, fingers tightening until she thought the bone might snap. "Where do you think you'll go?" Clara had waited until he'd fallen asleep, dulled by expensive whiskey and his own sense of invincibility. She'd packed what she could carry in 10 minutes, some clothes, her grandmother's silver locket, and the emergency cash she'd been hiding in a tampon box for 6 months. Her phone sat on the nightstand beside Ethan's sleeping form. She couldn't risk going back for it. The hotel parking structure loomed ahead, its yellow security lights creating pools of false warmth in the darkness. Clara's breath came in ragged gasps. Her feet ached. She'd worn the wrong shoes, delicate flats that were already falling apart at the seams. She had nowhere to go. No family left. Her friends had slowly disappeared over the 3 years with Ethan, driven away by his jealousy and her increasing isolation. The women's shelter she'd called 2 weeks ago had a 3-month waiting list. The clerk at the budget motel down the street had looked at her bruised wrist and asked for 2 forms of ID and a credit card, all things Ethan controlled. Clara ducked behind a concrete pillar as headlights swept past. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Was he awake? Had he noticed her missing already? The parking structure was mostly empty at this hour past 2 in the morning on a Thursday. A few scattered vehicles sat under the harsh lights. Clara moved between the shadows, looking for something, anything. A car with an unlocked door where she could hide until morning. A maintenance closet. A corner where security cameras didn't reach. Then she saw it. A black sedan, sleek and expensive, parked in the furthest corner. The vehicle gleamed despite the rain, its paint job so perfect it looked like liquid obsidian. But what caught Clara's attention was the trunk open just a crack, as if someone had closed it without quite latching it properly. She glanced around. No one. The security office sat at the opposite end of the structure, its windows dark except for the flickering blue glow of monitors. Clara's hands shook as she approached the car. This was insane. This was criminal. But what choice did she have? Just until morning. Just until she could think clearly and figure out her next move. The trunk lifted easily under her fingers. Inside was pristine black carpet, a spare tire, some emergency supplies neatly arranged. Enough space for a person, if they curled up tight. Clara looked back one more time at the empty structure. Then she climbed in, pulling her suitcase after her, and carefully lowered the trunk until it clicked shut. The darkness was absolute. The air smelled like leather and something else, expensive cologne and gun oil. Clara's breath sounded impossibly loud in the enclosed space. She wrapped her arms around her knees and tried to stop shaking. The car shifted slightly. Footsteps approached. Clara froze, holding her breath. A door opened the driver's side. The vehicle dipped with someone's weight. The engine purred to life, smooth and powerful. Classical music filled the space. Muffled through the back seat, something Italian, operatic. The car began to move. Clara pressed her hand over her mouth to muffle any sound. Her heart threatened to burst through her chest. Where was this person going? How long would the drive be? What would happen when they opened the trunk? The questions spiraled through her mind as the car glided through what felt like turn after turn. She lost track of time in the darkness. 5 minutes? 20? An hour? Her legs cramped. Her back ached against the spare tire. But she didn't dare move. Finally, the car stopped. The engine died. The music cut off. Clara heard a door open and close. Footsteps confident, unhurried, walked around the vehicle. They paused at the trunk. This was it. The latch clicked. Light flooded in, blinding after so long in darkness. Clara threw up her arm to shield her eyes, blinking rapidly. "Please," she managed, her voice cracking. "Please, I can explain." "Be quiet." The voice was male, deep, with a slight Italian accent. Not angry, not surprised. Just commanding. Clara's eyes adjusted. The man standing over her was tall, perhaps 6'2", wearing a dark suit that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. His face was angular, handsome in a severe way, sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw darkened with stubble, and eyes so dark they looked black in the garage lighting. His hair was pushed back from his forehead, slightly damp from the rain. He didn't look shocked to find a woman in his trunk. He looked curious. "Can you stand?" he asked. Clara nodded, though she wasn't sure. Her legs had gone numb. The man, whoever he was, reached down and took her arm, steadying her as she climbed out. His grip was firm but not painful. Not like Ethan's. Her suitcase tumbled out after her, landing with a sad thump on the pristine garage floor. They stood in what looked like a private garage, massive, with space for at least 10 vehicles. Security cameras dotted every corner. Another car, a motorcycle, and what looked like an armored SUV filled the other spaces. The walls were concrete but clean, almost sterile. "What's your name?" the man asked. "Clara." She swallowed hard. "Clara Bennett." He studied her face for a long moment. His gaze moved to her wrist, where Ethan's fingerprints still showed purple against her pale skin. Something shifted in his expression, a tightening around his eyes. "I'm Lorenzo," he said finally. Then, over his shoulder, "Marcus." A figure emerged from the shadows, a broad-shouldered man in black tactical gear. He looked like military, with cold eyes and a gun clearly visible at his hip. "Take Miss Bennett to the East guest room," Lorenzo said, still looking at Clara. "Make sure she has everything she needs. Food, clean clothes, medical supplies." "Sir?" Marcus's tone suggested this was unusual. Lorenzo's eyes never left Clara's face. "She's a guest. Treat her accordingly." Marcus hesitated only a second before nodding. "Yes, sir." Lorenzo turned to leave, his footsteps echoing across the garage floor. "Wait," Clara called out. Her voice sounded small in the large space. "Aren't you angry?" He paused at the doorway and glanced back. In the harsh overhead lighting, his face was all sharp planes and shadows. "Angry?" He considered the word. "No. But we will talk tomorrow, Miss Bennett, about why you chose to hide in my car, and about who gave you those bruises." Then he was gone, disappearing through a door that led deeper into whatever structure this was. Marcus gestured toward a different doorway. "This way, miss." Clara picked up her suitcase and followed, her mind reeling. She'd run from one dangerous man straight into the arms of another. But something about Lorenzo's eyes when he'd looked at her wrist told her this danger might be different. She just hoped she'd live long enough to find out if that instinct was right. Clara woke to sunlight, streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. For a disoriented moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back: the rain, the trunk, Lorenzo's dark eyes. She sat up quickly, her heart racing. The room around her was enormous, decorated in muted grays and whites with touches of gold. The bed she'd slept in was easily king-sized, with sheets that felt like silk. A door on the left led to a bathroom done in marble. Another door on the right stood slightly ajar, revealing what looked like a walk-in closet. This wasn't a guest room. This was a suite. Clara's muddy shoes sat by the door, looking pathetically out of place on the pristine white carpet. Her suitcase rested on a bench at the foot of the bed. Someone had left a tray of food on the nightstand: fresh fruit, pastries, coffee in a silver carafe. The coffee was still warm. She approached the windows cautiously. They overlooked a sprawling garden, manicured hedges, marble fountains, and beyond that, what looked like a vineyard stretching toward distant hills. The view was stunning, Mediterranean, unmistakably Italian. Where exactly had Lorenzo taken her? A soft knock at the door made her jump. "Miss Bennett?" A woman's voice, accented but gentle. "May I come in?" Clara grabbed a throw blanket and wrapped it around herself. She was still wearing yesterday's damp clothes. "Yes?" The door opened to reveal a woman in her 50s, gray hair pulled into a neat bun, wearing what looked like a housekeeper's uniform. Her face was kind, with deep smile lines around her eyes. "Good morning. I'm Lucia. I manage the household." She carried a garment bag over one arm. "Mr. De Luca asked me to bring you some clothes. I hope these will fit. I guessed at your size." Clara took the bag with trembling hands. "Thank you. Where am I, exactly?" "Mr. De Luca's estate. About 40 kilometers north of Milan." Lucia moved around the room with practiced efficiency, pulling back curtains, straightening already straight items. He'd like to see you for breakfast in an hour, if you're feeling well enough. The dining room is on the ground floor. I can show you the way when you're ready. An hour, Clara repeated numbly. Lucia paused at the door, her expression softening. Miss Bennett, Mr. De Luca is a complicated man, but he's not cruel. Whatever brought you here, you're safe in this house. Do you understand? Clara nodded, though she understood nothing. After Lucia left, Clara opened the garment bag. Inside were several complete outfits, casual but clearly expensive. Designer labels she'd only seen in magazines. Everything looked brand new, tags still attached. Along with the clothes were packages of underwear, still sealed, in exactly her size. Someone had gone shopping, at dawn, for a stranger who'd hidden in their employer's trunk. Clara chose a simple outfit, black pants and a cream-colored blouse, and took a shower that felt like heaven after sleeping in her clothes. The bathroom had every amenity imaginable. When she finally emerged, clean and dressed, she looked almost normal. The bruises on her wrist stood out starkly against the expensive fabric. Lucia appeared exactly 1 hour later to escort her downstairs. The house was even more impressive in daylight. Wide hallways with original artwork on the walls. Sculptures that looked ancient. Every surface gleamed. They passed several men in dark suit security. Clara assumed who nodded politely but watched her with sharp eyes. The dining room was sun-filled, with windows overlooking the garden. A long table dominated the space, set for two at one end. Lorenzo sat at the head, reading something on a tablet, a cup of espresso at his elbow. He looked up as Clara entered. In daylight, he was even more striking. His features had that classical Italian beauty. But there was something hard underneath, something that spoke of violence carefully controlled. Miss Bennett. He stood, gesturing to the chair beside him. Please, sit. Clara Saturday. Her hands twisted together in her lap. Lorenzo dismissed Lucia with a small nod, and they were alone. He poured coffee from a French press into her cup, a strangely domestic gesture from a man who radiated danger. You slept well? He asked. Yes, thank you. The room is beautiful. Good. He set down the press. Now, tell me why you were running. Clara's throat tightened. It's complicated. I have time. She looked at him then, really looked. His eyes weren't black. She realized they were a very dark brown, almost amber in the sunlight, and they were patient, waiting without pressure. His name is Ethan Cole, Clara heard herself say. We've been together for 3 years. He's controlling, jealous. It started small, checking my phone, wanting to know where I was. Then he isolated me from friends, made me quit my job, said he'd take care of everything. Lorenzo's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his stillness. The physical stuff started about a year ago, Clara continued, the words spilling out now, just grabbing my arm too hard at first, then pushing. Then, she touched her wrist without thinking. Last night, he said if I ever tried to leave, he'd kill me. And I believed him. Silence filled the room. A clock ticked somewhere. Birds sang in the garden. Finally, Lorenzo spoke. Where is he now? The hotel. Grand Europa. I don't know if he's looking for me yet. I left my phone, so he can't track me, but he'll look, Lorenzo said with certainty. Men like that always do. They can't accept losing control. Clara's eyes stung with tears she refused to shed. I know I shouldn't have hidden in your car. I know it was wrong. I had nowhere else to go. No family. No money he doesn't control. I was desperate. Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. Then he reached out and gently lifted her wrist, examining the bruises with a feather-light touch. My father was a violent man, he said softly. A powerful man in his world, respected and feared. But behind closed doors he beat my mother. For years. I was 7 when I found her at the bottom of the stairs. He said she fell. The police believed him, but I knew. Clara held her breath. She died 2 days later, Lorenzo continued, releasing her wrist. Internal bleeding. I swore that day that I would never become him, and that I would never allow a woman to suffer what my mother suffered. Not if I could prevent it. He met her eyes, and Clara saw something there she hadn't expected: recognition, understanding, perhaps even kinship in suffering. You're safe here, Lorenzo said. I give you my word. No one will hurt you in my house. But who are you? Clara asked, though she thought she already knew. A slight smile touched his lips, not quite warm, but not cold either. I'm a businessman, Miss Bennett. I deal in complicated ventures. Some legal, some not. I have enemies. I have rules. And one of those rules is this. Women and children are off limits. Always. You're Mafia, Clara said quietly. That's one word for it. He took a sip of his espresso. Does that frighten you? I don't know, Clara admitted. It should. But right now I'm more frightened of Ethan than I am of you. Lorenzo nodded as if this made perfect sense. Then stay. For as long as you need. We'll deal with your Ethan. And then we'll figure out what comes next. It wasn't a question. It wasn't even really an offer. It was a simple statement of fact, delivered with the calm certainty of a man who was used to being obeyed. Clara should have been terrified. She should have run. But instead, for the first time in 3 years, she felt something that had become foreign to her. She felt safe. 3 days passed in Lorenzo's house like a strange dream. Clara remained mostly in her room, venturing out only for meals. The routine was always the same. Lorenzo would be there, reading or working on his tablet, and they would eat together in comfortable silence or light conversation about neutral topics. He never pushed, never demanded. Simply was there. Lucia brought books. Marcus stationed himself outside her door like a silent guardian. The house staff treated her with polite deference, as if she were an honored guest rather than a stray who'd climbed into the boss's trunk. But Clara couldn't sleep. On the 4th night, she lay in the massive bed, staring at the ceiling. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ethan's face, heard his voice, felt his hands. The luxury around her couldn't touch the fear that had lived in her bones for so long. At 2 a.m, she gave up and wrapped herself in a silk robe Lucia had provided. The house was quiet, but not silent. She could hear the low murmur of security somewhere, the tick of clocks, the soft sound of wind in the gardens, and something else. Music. Piano music. Drifting from somewhere below. Clara followed the sound down the grand staircase, through hallways lit only by moonlight through tall windows. The music grew louder, clearer Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, played with technical precision but also with something deeper. Emotion. Longing. She found the source in a room she hadn't seen before. A music room, small by the standards of this house but beautiful. Moonlight poured through French doors that opened onto a terrace. A grand piano sat in the center, and at it sat Lorenzo. He'd removed his jacket and tie. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, revealing tanned forearms. His eyes were closed as he played, his whole body swaying slightly with the music. In this moment, he looked younger, less guarded, almost peaceful. Clara stood in the doorway, not wanting to interrupt. But as if he sensed her presence, Lorenzo's eyes opened. His hands didn't stop, continuing to pull those melancholy notes from the keys. Can't sleep? He asked over the music. Neither can you, apparently. I rarely sleep. His fingers moved across the keys with practiced grace. Too many ghosts. Clara stepped into the room. That's beautiful. How long have you played? Since I was 5. My mother taught me. It was the one thing my father allowed. He thought it made me refined. Lorenzo's lips quirked with dark humor. He didn't realize it gave me somewhere to go when he was being himself. The piece shifted into its most haunting passage. Without thinking, Clara began to hum along. She'd always loved this nocturne, had learned it herself as a teenager, though she hadn't touched a piano in years. Lorenzo glanced at her, surprise flickering across his features. You know it. I used to play. Before Ethan. Before she'd lost herself piece by piece. Sing it, Lorenzo said softly. The melody. If you'd like. Clara hesitated. But something about the moonlight, the late hour, the strange sanctuary of this house made her brave. She began to hum, then to use wordless sounds la and da following the melody line. Her voice was rusty, uncertain at first, but it remembered. Her body remembered music. Lorenzo's playing shifted to support her voice, becoming accompaniment rather than solo. They moved through the piece together, 2 broken people making something beautiful in the darkness. When the final notes faded, silence filled the room like a physical presence. Your voice, Lorenzo said, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. It's unexpected. Clara wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly self-conscious. I'm out of practice. You're perfect. The word hung in the air between them. Not it's perfect, you're perfect. Lorenzo stood from the piano bench and moved to the French doors, pushing them open. Cool night air flooded in, carrying the scent of jasmine from the gardens. He stepped onto the terrace, and after a moment, Clara followed. The view was breathtaking, the gardens silver in the moonlight, the vineyard beyond, and in the distance, the lights of Milan glowing against the dark sky. "Thank you," Clara said quietly, "for letting me stay. For everything." Lorenzo was silent for a long moment, his profile sharp against the night. "You asked if I was angry, that first night, about finding you in my car. I remember. I wasn't. I was. Relieved." Clara looked at him in confusion. Relieved? I'd had dinner with some associates. Tedious business. I was about to do something rash, make a decision that would have consequences. He turned to face her. Then I opened my trunk and found you there instead. Terrified. Desperate. Running from a monster who should be put down like a rabid dog. His voice had gone cold at the end, and Clara shivered despite the mild night. "You reminded me why I made my rules," Lorenzo continued. "Why I walk the line I walk. There are monsters everywhere, Clara. In business suits and penthouse apartments. In three-piece suits and courtrooms. My world is dark, yes. But I choose who I hurt and who I protect. You're Ethan? He's a coward who uses his power to terrorize someone weaker. That's worse than anything I've ever done." Clara found herself moving closer to him, drawn by the intensity in his voice. "You're not a monster, Lorenzo." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Yes, I am. But perhaps I'm a monster who protects what's precious rather than destroying it." Their eyes met. Something electric passed between them. Recognition, attraction, a connection neither of them could quite name. The moment stretched. Lorenzo lifted his hand as if to touch her face, then stopped himself. His jaw clenched with visible effort. "You should sleep," he said, his voice rough. "It's late." "I don't want to." The words escaped before Clara could stop them. "I don't want to be alone with my thoughts." Lorenzo studied her face in the moonlight. Then he made a decision. "Come with me." He led her back inside, but not to her room. Instead, he took her to a library she hadn't seen. Walls of books, leather furniture, a fireplace cold in the summer night. Lorenzo built a fire despite the warmth, and Clara realized it was for light, not heat, for ambiance. "Stay here," he said. "Read. Sleep. Whatever you need. I'll be working at my desk. You won't be alone." And that's what they did. Clara curled up in a leather armchair with a book, Dante's Inferno. Ironically enough, while Lorenzo sat at an antique desk across the room, reviewing papers and making quiet phone calls in Italian. The fire crackled. The clock ticked. And slowly, Clara's eyes grew heavy. She woke hours later to find the sun rising, the fire reduced to embers, and a blanket tucked carefully around her shoulders. Lorenzo was gone, but a note sat on the side table in elegant handwriting. "You hummed in your sleep. Not nightmares. Music. L." Clara held the note and felt something crack open in her chest, a fissure in the wall she'd built around her heart. She was falling for a Mafia boss who played Chopin and protected strays who hid in his trunk. God help her. But she was falling. The call came on the 7th day. Clara had just finished breakfast with Lorenzo. She'd begun to look forward to these morning meals. The way his presence made her feel anchored when Marcus appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. "Sir, we have a situation." Lorenzo's eyes never left his coffee cup. "Explain." "Ethan Cole has filed a missing persons report. He's been to every police station in the city, saying his girlfriend matching Miss Bennett's description was kidnapped. He's offering a reward. The story's hitting local news." Clara's stomach dropped. Her hands began to shake, rattling her teacup against the saucer. Lorenzo reached out and steadied her hand with his own. A gentle touch, grounding. "How much has he told them?" "He's playing the worried boyfriend. Says she's mentally unstable, might hurt herself. He's got medical records, a psychiatrist's diagnosis for depression and anxiety." "I never saw a psychiatrist," Clara said, her voice barely a whisper. "He made me see his friend once, a doctor who asked me 3 questions and wrote a prescription. I didn't even fill it." Lorenzo's jaw tightened. "Of course, he's building a narrative, making sure if you do surface, your credibility is damaged." "What do we do?" Clara asked, panic rising in her throat. Lorenzo stood, releasing her hand. "We get ahead of it. Marcus, gather everything, financial records. Phone records if we can get them. Hospital visits. Anything that shows a pattern of control and abuse. I want a full profile on Ethan Cole within 3 hours. Business, personal, every skeleton in his closet. Marcus nodded and disappeared. Clara pushed back from the table, pacing. He's going to find me. He's going to… No. Lorenzo's voice cut through her spiral. He moved in front of her, hands on her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. Listen to me, Clara. He is not going to find you. Not here. This estate has security that makes Fort Knox look like a playground. No one gets in without my permission. But the police have no jurisdiction here. And even if they did, they'd need evidence to search. They have none. His thumbs rubbed gentle circles on her shoulders. Breathe. Clara tried. Failed. Tried again. Lorenzo's steady gaze held hers until her breathing finally slowed. Why are you helping me? She asked. Really? I'm nobody. I bring you nothing but trouble. Something flickered in Lorenzo's eyes. He released her shoulders and turned away, running a hand through his hair in a rare gesture of uncertainty. My mother's name was Valentina, he said quietly. She was a school teacher before she married my father. She loved poetry and gardening and American jazz music. She had the most beautiful laugh. Clara waited, sensing this was important. He destroyed her piece by piece. Lorenzo continued. Started small, criticizing her clothes, her friends, how she kept house. Then came the isolation, then the violence. By the time I was old enough to understand what was happening, she was a ghost. All the light had gone out of her. He turned back to Clara, and his eyes were fierce. When I found you in my car, terrified and running, with those bruises on your wrist, I saw her, and I made a choice. I couldn't save my mother, but I can save you. I will save you. Capiche? Clara felt tears spill down her cheeks. Capisco, she whispered. I understand. The moment broke when Lorenzo's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression hardening. I need to take this. Stay inside today. Don't go near windows. Marcus will be posted outside your door. Lorenzo. But he was already striding toward his office, phone to his ear, switching seamlessly into rapid Italian. Clara stood alone in the dining room, her world tilting once again. Ethan wasn't giving up. He was escalating. And despite Lorenzo's promises, she knew how these things went. Ethan always won. He always found a way. She spent the day in her room, trying to read but unable to focus. Lucia brought lunch on a tray. Marcus stood guard like a statue outside her door, though he gave her a small nod whenever their eyes met. The house felt different now, less like a sanctuary and more like a beautiful cage. At sunset, a knock came at her door. Not Lucia's gentle tap or Marcus's professional announcement. This was firm, decisive. Clara? It's me, Lorenzo. She opened the door to find him changed from his morning suit into dark jeans and a black shirt. He looked younger, less formal but no less dangerous. Walk with me, he said. It wasn't a request, but it wasn't a command either. Clara followed him down the stairs and out through the French doors from the music room. The gardens were bathed in golden light, shadows growing long across the manicured paths. They walked in silence for a while, moving deeper into the grounds. Finally, they reached a small chapel old stone, covered in climbing roses. Lorenzo pushed open the heavy wooden door. Inside was cool and dark, lit only by votive candles flickering before a small altar. The space smelled of incense and old wood. Lorenzo led her to a pew, and they Saturday. My mother is buried here, he said softly. My father wanted her in the family crypt in the city. I refused. This is where she loved to sit, in this garden. So I built this chapel and brought her home. Clara looked around with new eyes. This wasn't just a religious space. It was a memorial, a promise kept. I spoke with some contacts, Lorenzo said. Ethan Cole is exactly what you said. Wealthy family, investment banker, clean record. On paper, he's perfect. But dig a little deeper. He pulled out his phone and showed her a file. 3 prior girlfriends. 2 filed restraining orders and then mysteriously dropped them after settlements. 1 tried to press charges for assault, but the case was dismissed insufficient evidence. His father's law firm represented him in all cases. Clara stared at the screen, her hands trembling. I'm not the first. No, but you're going to be the last. Lorenzo's voice was steel. I'm giving you a choice, Clara. Option 1. I can get you out of the country. New identity. New life. My people are very good at disappearing. You'd be safe, but you'd have to leave everything behind. Start completely over. And option 2? Lorenzo's eyes met hers in the candlelight. We fight. We gather evidence. We expose him. We make sure he can never hurt you or anyone else again. But that means going public, facing him. Are you strong enough for that? Clara thought about Valentina, buried in this garden, because her son refused to let her memory be owned by her abuser. She thought about the other women in that file, silenced by money and intimidation. She thought about the girl she used to be before Ethan, the one who sang and played piano and wasn't afraid. "I'm tired of running," she said quietly. "I want to fight." Lorenzo smiled, then a real smile, warm and proud. "Good, then we prepare. Marcus will teach you self-defense. I'll have my lawyer document everything. And when the time comes, we'll destroy him so completely that he'll wish he'd never touched you." "Why?" Clara asked. "Why go this far? You could just make me disappear. It would be safer for you." Lorenzo was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the candlelight. When he spoke, his voice was soft, almost vulnerable. "Because somewhere between finding you in my trunk and watching you hum Chopin at 2 a.m, you stopped being a stranger I was protecting, and became someone I couldn't bear to lose." Clara's breath caught. The air between them felt charged, heavy with unspoken words. Lorenzo stood, offering his hand. "Come. It's getting dark. We should go back." But as Clara took his hand, he didn't let go. They walked back through the gardens hand in hand. A Mafia boss and the woman who'd hidden in his trunk, bound together by shared pain and something neither of them was quite ready to name. Behind them, the sun set over the chapel where Valentina rested, finally at peace. And somewhere in Milan, Ethan Cole plotted and searched, not knowing he'd already lost. The game had changed, and Lorenzo De Luca didn't lose. 2 weeks later, Clara stood in Lorenzo's study, while Marcus adjusted the small microphone hidden in her necklace. "Remember," Lorenzo said from his desk, his voice tight with controlled tension, "you're in control. If at any point you feel unsafe, you say the code word and we pull you out. Understood?" Clara nodded, though her mouth was dry. Understood. The plan was simple in theory, terrifying in practice. She would meet Ethan in a public place, a cafe she'd suggested, one that Lorenzo's people had already secured. She'd record him admitting to the abuse, the control, the threats. Italian law was tricky, but with enough evidence and the right pressure, they could build a case. But more than that, Lorenzo had explained, they needed Ethan to feel confident, to think he'd won. Only then would he reveal his true nature. "He'll try to gaslight you," Marcus warned as he finished with the microphone. "Make you doubt your own memories. Don't engage with that. Stay focused on facts. And don't let him touch you," Lorenzo added, his voice dark. "If he lays one hand on you, the deal is off and I'm coming in." Clara looked at him. In 2 weeks, she'd watched this man conduct business both legitimate and not with cold efficiency. She'd seen him intimidate grown men with a single look. But right now, in this moment, he looked almost afraid. "I'll be fine," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "He's just a man." "He's the man who hurt you for 3 years, Lorenzo countered. "Don't underestimate him." An hour later, Clara sat in Cafe Vittorio, her hands wrapped around a cappuccino she couldn't drink. The cafe was busy with the lunch crowd perfect cover. Lorenzo's people were scattered throughout. A man reading a newspaper, a woman with a laptop, a couple by the window. All watching, all ready. And there was Lorenzo himself, sitting at the bar with his back to her, dressed casually enough to blend in but positioned where he could see everything in the mirror behind the bottles. The door chimed. Clara's heart lurched. Ethan Cole walked in, and for a moment, Clara almost didn't recognize him. He'd lost weight. His expensive suit hung slightly loose. His hair, usually perfectly styled, was disheveled. He looked diminished, desperate, but his eyes, when they found her, blazed with familiar intensity. "Clara." He crossed to her table in 3 strides, reaching for her hands. She pulled them back. "Sit down, Ethan." He did, his jaw clenching. "Do you have any idea what you've put me through? 2 weeks, Clara. 2 weeks of hell, not knowing if you were dead or—" "I'm fine. Where have you been?" "Away." "That's not an answer." His voice rose slightly, and she saw several of Lorenzo's people shift position subtly. "I filed a police report. I've been searching everywhere. I thought—" "You thought what?" Clara interrupted. "That I'd killed myself? That's what you told the police, isn't it? That I was mentally unstable." Ethan's expression flickered. "You are unstable. You need help, Clara. You're not well. Come home and we'll get you the treatment you need." Like your friend, the psychiatrist. The one who diagnosed me after 3 questions? He was trying to help you. No, Ethan. He was helping you. Building a paper trail to make me look crazy so no one would believe me when I finally left. Ethan's hands clenched on the table. That's paranoid thinking. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're not yourself. I'm more myself than I've been in 3 years. His eyes narrowed. Who have you been with? Some new guy? Is that what this is about? You left me for someone else? I left you because you hurt me. I never. You did. Clara's voice was steady now, stronger. You controlled every aspect of my life. You isolated me from my friends. You made me quit my job. You went through my phone, my emails, my purse. And when I tried to talk to you about it, you grabbed me hard enough to bruise. I was worried about you. You threatened to kill me, Ethan. Silence fell across their table. Ethan's face had gone pale, then red. Around them, the cafe's ambient noise continued the hiss of the espresso machine, conversations in Italian and English, but at their table, the air felt frozen. I would never. You said if I ever left, you'd kill me. Those were your exact words. Ethan leaned forward, his voice dropping to a hiss. You're twisting everything, making me sound like a monster when all I did was love you. I gave you everything. A home, security, a life. And this is how you repay me? By running away and spreading lies? They're not lies. Prove it. He sat back, arms crossed. You have no proof, no witnesses, nothing. It's your word against mine. And who's going to believe an unemployed woman with a history of mental health issues over a successful businessman? There it was, the real Ethan, finally showing his face, the cold calculator behind the mask of the concerned boyfriend. Clara felt something settle in her chest. Not fear, not anymore. Clarity. You're right, she said softly. I have no proof, no witnesses, nothing that would stand up in court. You made sure of that. Ethan's expression shifted to triumph. Then come home. We can forget this happened. Start fresh. I forgive you for leaving. But here's the thing, Ethan. Clara met his eyes. I'm not coming home. Ever. Because I'd rather have nothing. No money, no home, no security than spend one more day under your control. His hand shot out, grabbing her wrist. Exactly where he'd grabbed her before. His grip was painful, possessive. You don't get to make that choice. In the mirror behind the bar, Clara saw Lorenzo stand. Let go of me, Clara said, loud enough that nearby tables turned to look. We're leaving. Ethan stood, pulling her up. Now. Sir. One of Lorenzo's men appeared the newspaper reader. I think the lady wants to stay. Ethan whirled. This is none of your business. Actually, Lorenzo said, materializing beside Ethan, it is. Ethan's eyes widened as he recognized Lorenzo not personally, but the type, the expensive clothes, the dangerous stillness, the air of controlled violence. He released Clara's wrist and took a step back. Who the hell are you? A friend, Lorenzo said pleasantly. And you're hurting someone under my protection. I suggest you leave. Now, before this becomes unpleasant. Ethan looked between them, understanding dawning. You're with him? You left me for a goddamn criminal? I left you because you're an abuser, Clara said. Who I'm with now is none of your concern. The hell it isn't. You're my girlfriend. Was. Lorenzo's voice cut like a blade. Past tense. And if you ever come near her again, if you even think about her, I'll make sure you regret it in ways your comfortable little mind can't imagine. Capiche? For a moment, it looked like Ethan might argue. But something in Lorenzo's eyes, something ancient and utterly merciless, made him hesitate. You can't threaten me, Ethan said, but his voice wavered. That wasn't a threat. Lorenzo smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That was a promise. Now leave, and pray we never meet again. Ethan looked at Clara one last time. She saw it in his eyes, the loss of control, the rage, the disbelief that his possession had developed a will of its own. Then he turned and walked out, his exit watched by every person in the cafe. Clara's legs gave out. Lorenzo caught her, guiding her into her chair. Easy. Breathe. Did we get it? She asked. The recording? Marcus appeared, tapping his ear. Every word. Including him admitting he expected you to be believed over based on gender and financial status alone. And the assault at the end was captured by 3 different cameras. Clara started laughing, though tears streamed down her face. We did it. We actually did it. Lorenzo knelt beside her chair. his hand on her back. You did it. You were braver than you know. What happens now? Now, my lawyers file a restraining order backed by evidence. We send copies of everything to his firm's ethics board, his family, and his previous victims. We make sure everyone knows who Ethan Cole really is. And if he's smart, he'll disappear into whatever hole men like him crawl into when their masks slip. Clara looked at Lorenzo, this dangerous, complicated man who'd taken a stranger into his home and armed her with the tools to fight back. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Lorenzo stood, offering his hand. We still have work to do, but the hardest part is over. You faced him. You didn't flinch. The rest is just details. They left the cafe together, Lorenzo's hand on the small of her back, Marcus and the others forming a loose protective circle. As they climbed into Lorenzo's car, Clara caught sight of her reflection in the window. She looked different, stronger, more alive. For 3 years, she'd been slowly dying. But maybe, just maybe, she was finally learning to live again. And this time, she wouldn't let anyone take that from her. 8 months later, Clara sat on the terrace of a small cafe overlooking Lake Como. The morning sun warmed her face as she reviewed notes for her online music theory class teaching piano to students around the world from the comfort of Lorenzo's estate. Or rather, their estate now. Your coffee, signora. She looked up to find Lorenzo settling into the chair across from her, 2 cappuccinos in hand. He'd shed the suit jacket, his white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up. Every day he looked a little less like a mafia boss and a little more like the man she'd heard playing Chopin in the moonlight, though he was still very much both. Have you seen the news? He asked, sliding his tablet across the table. Clara scanned the headline. Investment banker Ethan Cole sentenced to 2 years for assault, fraud. Below it was his mugshot, no longer the polished businessman, but a man whose carefully constructed life had collapsed under the weight of evidence. 3 of his previous victims had come forward after Clara's case went public. His firm had fired him. His family had disowned him. The house of cards had fallen exactly as Lorenzo predicted. How do you feel? Lorenzo asked, watching her face carefully. Clara considered the question. A year ago, she would have felt fear, worry that Ethan would somehow come back, that the nightmare wasn't truly over. But now, looking at that mugshot, she felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just a quiet sense of closure. I feel free, she said simply. Lorenzo smiled, that real smile that still made her heart skip. Good, because I have something for you. He pulled a small envelope from his pocket and slid it across the table. Inside was a key. Clara turned it over in her palm, confused. What's this for? The house in Florence. The one we looked at last month. Lorenzo's eyes held a question. I bought it. It's yours, if you want it. Mine? Yours. In your name. Completely separate from anything to do with me. He reached across the table and took her hand. I told you once that I'd give you a choice. Disappear and start over, or stay and fight. You chose to fight, and you won. But I need you to know that you're not here because you have nowhere else to go. You're here because you choose to be. Every day. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. In 8 months, Lorenzo had given her so much safety, support, the tools to rebuild her life. But this was something different. This was freedom to leave if she ever wanted to. Which, paradoxically, made her never want to leave. What if I don't want it? She asked softly. Lorenzo's expression grew cautious. Then we'll sell it. It's no matter. No, I mean, what if I want to stay here? With you? His thumb traced circles on her palm. Then you stay. But know that you have the option. Always. Clara stood and moved around the table, settling into Lorenzo's lap. He wrapped his arms around her waist, burying his face against her shoulder. I love you, she whispered. My beautiful monster. She felt him smile against her skin. Ti amo, la mia piccola intrusa. I love you, my little stowaway. They sat like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other as tourists wandered past and boat engines hummed on the lake. 2 broken people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way. A terrified woman hiding in a trunk. A dangerous man who chose protection over destruction. Play for me tonight? Clara asked. The nocturne? Only if you sing. Deal. Later that evening, as promised, Lorenzo sat at his piano while Clara stood beside him, her hand on his shoulder. They moved through Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major together, their voices and hands creating something beautiful from their shared scars. and in the doorway Lucia watched with a small smile. Marcus, standing guard as always, allowed himself a satisfied nod. Even the household staff, usually so careful to maintain distance, paused in their duties to listen. This house had seen violence, had been built on blood and power and dark dealings. But tonight, it held something else. Something it had never known before Lorenzo brought Clara home. It held hope. When the last notes faded, Lorenzo pulled Clara into his lap on the piano bench. She curled against his chest, listening to his heartbeat steady, sure, alive. "Still no regrets?" he asked. "About choosing the wrong car that night?" Clara thought about everything that had happened since. The fear, the fighting, the slow healing, the love that had grown in the spaces between. The life she was building, piece by piece, stronger than before. "No regrets," she said. "I chose the wrong car, but I chose the right person." Lorenzo kissed the top of her head, his arms tightening around her. Outside, the Italian night settled over the estate, dark and beautiful. And inside, a mafia boss and the woman he'd saved, or perhaps who'd saved him, held each other in the moonlight, finally at peace.